So the actual act of creating your podcast will guide you closer to your clarity and confidence in stepping into your next chapter, or like I like to say, your goddess era. Hi, I'm Christina Barcy. Welcome to the Boss Goddess Podcast. This is your invitation to step out of the hustle and into your purpose and passion. What's my secret? Podcasting. This is how I've up-leveled my life on multiple occasions when I was ready to bring my dreams to life. And it's how I help my clients realize their big dreams. This is where you become the boss goddess in your niche and gently bring your dreams to life. Did you know podcasting is a clarity companion? By just going through the process of creating your podcast, you will become more clear on your path forward. And what follows clarity? Confidence. If you're ready to take a step forward that follows your authenticity, meets you exactly where you are now in this moment, and will guide you forward in a creative and organic way, then I encourage you to explore what a podcast created by you could look like. You can get started with my free Activate Your Goddess Era with Podcasting guidebook, where you'll receive 5 days of gentle guidance and a resource to your inbox that will get you started in exploring this option as your next step to clarity, confidence, and maybe even the very foundation that will become your next brand or business. Just go to boss-goddess.co/activate or click the link in the show notes. Did you know I started this podcast during a time when I was pivoting? It was 2018 and I had finally quit my day job. I had spent the few previous years exploring some alternative options to what I had planned for myself, which was to become a famous actor, of course. But by 2018, I was a certified Kaizen Muse creativity coach. I was a certified level 2 Reiki energy healer. I had written and created an audio drama series before it was cool, back in 2013 and 14. And I had produced my first film. I also had my first 2 podcast production clients. So I was kind of doing all of the things at once because I had never not worked in a restaurant before. That was my day job that I had finally just quit. And I'd never created my own way, and I wasn't sure how any of it would go, which of those things I just listed off were going to work, which one I was going to lean into. So I was doing them all, and the one thing I did know was that I was in love with all of it. I had finally succumbed to the pivot. I finally was ready to do something else, to trust myself, to either, fully pursue coaching or Reiki healing or production for podcasting, which is the direction that I went in. And if you've been listening, then you know that already. And I always baked in coaching and whenever I could, Reiki energy healing type stuff, like my frequency talk and spirituality that I talk about here on this podcast. I kind of sprinkle it all in different places and work it into my creative process when I'm working with a client. But my production agency is really the thing that I ended up going into. But when I started this podcast, I did it with the idea of helping others take bold action and begin, whatever that meant for them. Because that's what I was doing in my life for the first time in a really big way. And I could finally speak with confidence and excitement on this topic, and with the skills and tools that I now had from the creativity coaching certification and all the other things that I was trying. But I didn't really know which thing it was going to be. But I was really just motivated by this idea of taking bold action and beginning. So when I was creating this podcast, it was really coming from that inspired place. That was my why. Okay. We're going to talk more about that. And this podcast that I started that I'm talking about is the one that you're listening to right now, which was originally called Be Bold, Begin, which is totally on brand for what was for my why, for what inspired my creating it. And it was actually just this year that I rebranded it to what is now called the Boss Goddess podcast, because I am pivoting again. So as I share this with you this season of the podcast, season 13, many of the things that I'll be talking about are the things that I'm applying in my life for myself in real time right now. And also because I've done these things before, and I did it when I launched this show back in 2018. And I know how all of these things work, especially because I've helped lots of others leverage podcasting in this way for almost 8 years now when I'm working with my production clients. I love working with someone who is creating something new and they're adding a podcast to help them bring that other vision to life. And this is my sweet spot. It works really well when we can pair it with a pivotal moment. So that's what we're talking about today. And in fact, this container and process of podcasting, like I just shared, it's my favorite way to explore and create during a moment when we're pivoting, when we're transforming and stepping into a new way of doing things, or just maybe creating something new altogether. I personally am doing a little bit of both right now in my life. And the reason behind why I feel that way, why I feel like it's such a good container and process, is because the stuff that I've seen unfold again and again, both with myself and for others, are the things that I'll be sharing with you today in this episode. And I'll share why I believe podcasting is an evolution companion. So here's what I'll be sharing with you today. We'll be talking about why podcasting allows you to begin before you're completely clear on the what and the how, and that all you actually need to get started is the why and a little curiosity. We'll talk about that in a moment too. And then I'll explain the reason audio podcasting as a medium is so engaging, and how your unique self as you are right now is the thing that's going to resonate with your future audience just by showing up, sharing your truth and your life stories, and any expertise that you might be ready to highlight as well if you want to go and incorporate that. And then I'll be sharing how these listeners will be a guiding force in and of themselves that will help guide your clarity if you choose to lean into them, which I highly recommend, and create spaces to dialogue with them. And then lastly, this brings me to my next point. Podcasting allows you to build from a place of reciprocity and with a community-focused approach that will serve you when you're ready to leverage this very aligned audience that you've created. Meaning, if and when you create something to sell, you'll already have the number one key thing every business needs: an engaged and ready to buy audience to sell to. So this is how you can begin to build towards your bigger vision, even if you don't quite know what that looks like yet. And it's where you might create and share an offer with your future audience, or the audience that you'll build, that can turn this exploration that you're doing right now during this sort of in-between pivot moment eventually into a monetized business and brand that was built on authenticity, transparency, and trust. Which, by the way, everyone in marketing right now is talking about how we're in a trust recession, meaning it's much harder to gain someone's trust online right now than it's ever been. But we now know, thanks to many studies, that audio podcasting is the most trustworthy medium compared to everything else out there by 75%. Meaning people trust podcasts 75% more than other mediums like social media, for example. I'll link to an article in the show notes that goes into that more. They did a bunch of studies, and it always comes on top when we're talking about trust. Now, if you already have a business, then you already know how valuable it is to have this level of trust and relationship with your client base or customer. And this is why podcasting just pairs so well with a business, but also serves you during this transition. It starts establishing that trust before you even know where things will land, and you don't have to know where things are going to go. They will just evolve based on the process. It does require bold action though, and what I call a curiosity mindset, because it's sometimes hard to start before you feel like you're clear. But the truth is that clarity comes from starting. It's kind of like, feels like a chicken egg scenario. So this is a really gentle, inviting, authentic way to begin to create that process of clarity without needing to prepare a lot of things that are probably going to change anyway once you start engaging with the audience. So this is a great way to kind of bridge that period. All right, so let's dive into some of this. We're going to start with the why. So exploring your why is a wonderful opportunity to really connect with what would bring you the most joy. Joy is key here. Exploring what is really lighting you up right now, what has you inspired, or is something that you'd like to evolve towards and explore, right? I also suggest considering how exploring this idea creatively as a podcast can not just enrich your life, but also the lives of those who tune in. Just start thinking about that when we align our focus and efforts with our joy and passion, and then share that with the world. We open ourselves up to so much possibility and magic, and it becomes magnetic. So this is really leading with that curiosity mindset that I mentioned. And I'll share with you just some journal prompt questions that you can do right now around this that are actually from my free Activate Your Goddess Era with Podcasting guidebook. It's free, and here's a little taste of what this section looks like. So a few questions that you can journal on around the why. Here's the first one. What would you love to explore more deeply? And then just free write or brainstorm on that. What would you love to explore more deeply? Next, in what ways are you feeling the desire to help others or entertain or create community or connection? So this is that part where we start thinking about how you want to maybe fulfill a purpose or tap into solving a problem for someone or helping someone along something that you are also working through or have worked through. That's another way to think about it. So here's the question again. In what ways are you feeling the desire to help others or entertain or create community or connection? And then lastly, how might bringing this idea to life or exploring it further possibly add to your life or create the change that you're ready for? Bringing it back to you, how is this going to add to your life if you pursue this theme, topic, idea, this thing you want to explore? Okay, and those are all in the freebie I mentioned. So moving on to the reason audio podcasting as a medium is so much more engaging. Remember the trust factor. This is why. Your story and your uniqueness. That's what's going to be so engaging. We all have moments in our lives where we made realizations, we've overcome barriers, we had an epiphany, we experienced a victory, or the opposite, right? We had a hard time around something, or we ran into some blocks and barriers, or the circumstances in our lives became tricky and we had to navigate that. All of that is extremely relatable. And then we want to shift it in a way that someone can, also relate and find a pathway they may try out of their experience that they are, that's similar to you, right? Or maybe you had a big shift in your life and how you kind of walked through that. So all of that, that's the treasure chest for you. That's the treasure chest of moments that are going to be very unique to you, but also very relatable, where the listener will see what's possible for them in your story. And the normalization is also huge. Being able to help someone feel like they're not the only one is a really big takeaway that we get from this experience of podcasting. So that is what will cause them to lean in and become your most engaged audience. So again, I'll share a few journal prompts from my free Activate Your Goddess Era with Podcasting guidebook, because we talk about this in there. So here they are. When was a time in your life that you remember and then fill in your topic or theme, when you remember that really having an impact in your life? Like, we're going to start thinking about these stories that we want to unearth so that we can share them. And what I mean by topic or theme is going back to how I started this podcast that you're listening to right now. My theme was how to take bold action and begin that thing in your life that you're feeling called to that feels like risky. For me, it felt very risky. It felt scary. I didn't have any idea how to do it. So I just didn't for many years. And then one day I was like, well, it needs to change. I might as well just start taking a step somehow, and it's going to feel scary. And what if that's okay? So bold action. And as soon as you take that bold action, now you've begun, right? So that's the idea. That was the theme behind my show when I first started back in 2018. And by the way, like begin, for me, it was a huge life shift, but that could also just be starting a passion that you've put down that you remember, wishing you did as a kid, or you have a creative project that you've been wanting to get to. It can be something like that too. And if you do listen to the first season of this show, I do talk about it being more like stuff like that too. All of that counts. So I wanted to walk through that just so you could kind of see how I got started before I really knew like which thing I was going to lean into. So once again, my topic and theme was how to take bold action and begin. Now think about what that is for you that you're inspired to share through something that you've experienced in your life. And here's that journal prompt again. When was a time in your life that you remember your topic or theme really having an impact in your life? And then next, think about when there was a moment or two in your life that contributed to maybe a shift or a realization that you needed to sort of shift perspective or take a new action or something that helped you in that moment from the last question. And then brainstorm on that. And then next, we want to sort of narrow down a few of these stories or times in your life that you could share about on your podcast so that you have sort of a few stories that you can like start with. All right, so next, let's talk about how these listeners will be a guiding force in and of themselves that will help guide your clarity if you choose to lean into them, which I highly recommend, and create spaces to dialogue with them. So that's like another layer to podcasting, is to then create some kind of space where they can go into, where you can meet them, talk with them, email them. So first of all, the clarity will start to unfold for you by just answering these prompts that I'm sharing with you, which again, I'll link to the free Activate Your Goddess Era with Podcasting guidebook in the show notes so you can do them at your own pace and also get the rest of the guidance that's in there for you once you sign up to receive it, because there's a lot more than what I'm sharing with you right now in this episode. And then more clarity will take place when you take more steps in creating your episodes and then speaking them. This process alone allows for your brain to begin to process in a new way. So the actual act of creating your podcast will guide you closer to your clarity and confidence in stepping into your next chapter, or like I like to say, your goddess era. And then when you launch your podcast, you will have listeners. And the next step is to invite them in to engage with you in some way. Now, a few ways to do that is to create a free or low ticket community where you can meet them and talk with them and get a sense of what is resonating with them. I've done this over the course of the year, 6 years now, almost 7. And I've started several types of memberships, from free to, low ticket. It's all been really cool. And as I shift and evolve the show, then I oftentimes will create like a new community moment. So there's lots of ways to kind of play with this idea. And I've done it many times, and it's always so valuable to actually talk with your listeners. Oh, and I want to share that in next week's episode, I'll actually be sharing 5 ways you can create money with your podcast before you even have a business at this very early stage when you're pivoting or figuring out what to do next. So be sure to listen to that one next week, because I'll go deeper into this idea of monetizing with community and things like that. So for now, though, here's some ideas. You may invite them to a Facebook group or another platform of your choice. I don't love Facebook, but whatever. I also highly suggest inviting them to your email list, which can be as simple as starting a monthly newsletter and inviting them into your email list to receive that, so that you can just keep the conversation going beyond your episodes by emailing them. And that's how you can start to get to know them and get a sense of who is really in your audience. And I highly suggest an email provider. One that I love and use is called kit.com. I do have an affiliate link for it, so I'll put that in the show notes for you if you want to explore Kit. And this is different than your Gmail, by the way. I highly suggest using something like Kit. MailChimp is another one to engage with your listeners through email. So basically, as you start talking with them, you'll gain more clarity on how to create something that serves them, which brings me to the last point today. Podcasting allows you to build from a place of reciprocity and with a community-focused approach that will serve you when you're ready to leverage this now very aligned audience that you've created. Meaning, if and when you create something to sell, you'll already have the number one key thing that every business needs: an engaged and ready to buy audience to sell to. Now, this is why you want to set up an email provider rather than using your Gmail, because it has things that included that you'll need to create an offer and to measure the engagement of the audience inside your inbox when you're ready to use those tools. It can also help you test out subjects for your podcast. So for example, I could write you an email that is on a topic that I haven't covered yet on the podcast, and I can see if the title of the email was a good title to use or not based on how many people opened the email, and if anyone clicked on things in the email or sent me replies. So on a very basic level, it's great to have this tool early so you can use it to understand who your audience is and what they want more of, what they're interested in or struggling with, and you can start that dialogue with them. And the part I love the most is you get to connect with them, meaning creating episodes can be a solitary act. So when you can talk with your listener in some way, the whole process suddenly becomes so much more fulfilling. So with all of that said, I would love to invite you to my inbox and share your thoughts and what you'd like more of or what you're struggling with. And that helps me know what to create next. Now you know how this can work for you in a really lovely way. So if you share with me what you're working on or what you're struggling with or what you want more of, I can create something for you. So the best way to join me right now is by, of course, signing up for one of my freebies. And the one we're talking about today is a great one to further explore this topic with, the Activate Your Goddess Era with Podcasting Guidebook. You will get 5 emails, and each one will guide you, and each email will give you a resource to use. Journal prompts like we talked about today. There's a spreadsheet option where you can start exploring, what kind of audience you think you might want to attract. And there's also a checklist at the end, so you can keep going beyond what we talk about in the guidebook and keep taking steps forward, because that's the goal, is to just keep taking one small step, right? And suddenly you've now activated more of your goddess era by doing the exercises in the guidebook. So it's designed to just kind of like get you started in a really lovely way. And you can click the link in the show notes for that, or you can go to boss-goddess.co/activate. So thank you so much for being here. I'm wishing you lots of curiosity, kindness, and courage as you step further into your magic, or your goddess era, like I like to call it. Thank you for being here. It means so much to me. I hope this topic was of use, was interesting, was helpful. Again, jump into my inbox and let me know what you think. So I'll talk to you next week, and bye for now. Thank you so much for listening to the Boss Goddess podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and found it valuable, please share it with someone in your life who would also benefit. Word of mouth is still the best way to share podcasts. And I would also love to hear from you in the form of a review on Apple Podcasts. This really helps new listeners discover the show as well, and it makes this process for me so much more fulfilling to hear from you. Wishing you lots of love and magic. Until next time.